Ladies and gentlemen, it's me, Mr. Cifaldi, coming at you with our first Excel video. Alright, and our first activity. So, I hope y'all are excited to learn something new, and we're going to get started here. You'll see that on my screen, I'm starting from the Office 365 app launcher. This is the menu we showed you in the previous video in Office 365. If you're not sure how to get here, look at the previous video, and without any further ado, we will go forward with Excel. I'm going to click on Excel to open up a new blank workbook. After it loads, you're going to see our blank spreadsheet. This spreadsheet is set up with columns labeled by letters, rows labeled by numbers, and we're going to start by just creating a very simple spreadsheet with some information. In cell A1, I'd like you to type restaurant survey. In cell A3, we're going to put customer questionnaire. See if I typed that correctly. Our spell checker should still be working just fine in Excel, just like it would in Microsoft Word. And starting in cell A5, we're going to go ahead and we're going to type the beginning of our questions. So our first question is, was the food delicious? And with a question mark, when I want to complete typing a text and I want it to be entered into the cell, I tap the Enter key. That will automatically drop me down to the cell below. Our next question is, was the service friendly? We'll tap Enter. Our third question is, was the food delivered on time? You'll notice that when I begin typing any text in a given column, that it's going to try to pre-fill that text with any of the text that's happened up above the current cell. We can sometimes use this to our advantage, although we're giving different questions at this point, so that autofill feature is not going to help us out. I could, however, if I chose, click on one of these given pre-fills to automatically enter that information in, which would save me some time. Now, I want a different question for my question number 4. So I am going to go ahead and press by selecting A8, where I just entered the information. I'm going to click the delete key, which is going to take that question off. It's going to clear that cell. Alright, our last and final question was, did you enjoy your visit? Okay, so we have in cell A1 our restaurant survey, in cell A3 customer questionnaire, in cells A5 through A8 we have our 4 questions. Was the food delicious? Was the service friendly? Was the food delivered on time? Did you enjoy your visit? You'll notice that when I click on these cells that are entered, that have information in them, we're going to see that text appear in a second location, up here at the top. This is what's known as your formula bar. That formula bar will have some different features available with it later when we're adding different things that is not text, specifically formulas, which we will learn in a later video. But for right now, it simply just repeats the information that is listed below. We're going to enter in some spots for 3 different restaurants. In cell D4, I'd like you to type restaurant 1. Let's go restaurant A. Now if I want to move to the right, instead of tapping enter, I'm going to press the tab key. The tab key moves me to the right instead of down. Here I'm going to type restaurant B and then tab again for restaurant C. You'll notice now that I'm putting in text horizontally that the text seems to disappear at the edge of the cell. Okay, we can't see our A, we can't see our B, we can only see restaurant C, so it's being covered up. We don't have that problem down below, but if we had typed anything, let's say if I try to click on B5, I'll notice that in the text bar, in the formula bar, there is no text there. This is an empty cell. It doesn't look empty because I can see that there are letters covering that cell up, but in fact it is still empty. There's nothing in here. If I typed a word, it would cover up the question from before. Alright, so I'm going to click on B5 where I put that new information. I'm going to use the delete key to get rid of that new text, and so now I'm going to see my entire question. We want to be able to read all of the text that's on our spreadsheet, so that means that we need to give these words more space. The way that we're going to do that is by hovering between the 2 letters above the line that forms the right boundary of restaurant A. So between D and E, I'm going to see that 2-headed arrow. At this point I can click and I can drag to the right. I can take a pretty good guess of how big I need to make it in order to make restaurant A visible. Now, I don't have to guess. I can actually let the computer do it for me. If I hover between the E and the F, this time I'm going to double click and you will see that the auto fit feature of Excel will make this cell large enough to fit restaurant B without me having to drag it over. Let's do that again between F and G, and we'll see that our 3 different restaurants are now fully visible. Nothing is cut off. Okay, so we have our questions and we have spots for our 3 restaurants. But I want to change this worksheet just a little bit, and I want to show you how we can move text around the spreadsheet. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to select multiple cells. The way I'm going to do this is I'm going to click in cell A5 and hold, and then I'm going to drag down until I've highlighted cells A5 through A8. When I release, you're going to see that there's this green border around the cells. And if I hover over that green border, I can see the 4-headed move arrow. If I click while I see the 4-headed move arrow, I can now drag those cells really wherever I'd like them to go, but I'm going to put them just over in column B. So I'm just going to drag them 1 cell to the right. The reason I'm going to do that is because I want to enter some new information to the left here. I'm going to number my questions. So now clicking in A5, which is now blank, I'm going to type Q1 for question 1. Enter. Q2. This is going to show us and give us an opportunity now to see our first glimpse of a really important and sometimes confusing tool, which is called the fill handle. Alright, I've now created a pattern with Q1 and Q2. Of course, for this example, it's not going to be too hard for me to go ahead and type Q3 and Q4, but I want to use this as a chance to experiment. So, using my mouse, I'm going to highlight Q1 and Q2 by dragging down. Now that both of them are selected, I'm going to notice that there is a little green box in the bottom right hand corner of my selection. If I hover over that, I'm going to see a thin plus sign. That thin plus sign shows me that I'm located over the fill handle. If I click on the fill handle and I drag down 2 blocks, I'm going to see that it is going to fill Q3 and Q4 for me. The fill handle can be used in a lot of different ways, and we're going to see that it's actually becomes even more important the more advanced we get with Microsoft Excel. But for now, we can just see that it can recognize a pattern in our text, and using that pattern, it can automatically fill more text when we click and drag on that fill handle. Alright, we're going to use our new skill of auto fitting. I'm going to double click between the A and the B at the top, which is going to make, oops, that's not where I want to go. I actually want to make this smaller. So instead of using auto fit, I'm going to drag this to the left, just so I've got like a nice fitting column for that Q1 through Q4. I am going to do my double click next to the B, between the B and the C. This way I'm going to have my column B is wide enough to display my 4 questions. This now reveals to me that I have this empty column C, that's not being used for anything. When we're working with Excel, for most spreadsheets, these blank rows are not usually good to have. So I want to delete it. The way I'm going to delete that column is by right-clicking on the C up at the top, the column header, and when I right-click, I'm going to see a number of options, and one of those options is to delete the column. We'll do that, and now I can see I've got column A, my question numbers, column B, my questions, and in column C, let's see, say C4 through E4, I have my restaurant A, B, and C. This is where I'm going to ask you to fill in some of your own information. So, for an example, I'm going to fill in restaurant A with Taco Bell. Underneath Taco Bell, I'm going to fill in my answers in yes or no. So, for question 1, was the food delicious? I have to say I'm a sucker for Taco Bell, so I'm going to say yes. Was the service friendly? Last time I visited, not so much. Was the food delivered on time? Yes, they were very fast. Did I enjoy my visit? Not particularly. So, there are my answers for my last visit to Taco Bell. Okay? What I'd like you to do is go ahead and fill in your restaurant names. Make sure that after you type in your restaurant names that the columns are wide enough to display the whole restaurant name, and answer the questions for those 3 restaurants to create your first table. When you're done, click in cell C1, and I'd like you to type your name, first and last, and we're going to make sure that we have our table saved. Click on File. Oops. I can see right now that my file menu is grayed out. meaning I can't use any of those options. I know what the problem is. When I am editing text in a cell, it can be really easy to not to think about it, but you have to make sure that that information is actually entered. And that's simply done just by making sure we tap enter after we'd add that information. Okay? Now that I've actually entered the information, I click on the file menu and look, it's all lit up again. So basically, Excel just didn't want me to move forward until it was sure that I wanted that text actually to be set up there before I went and did something crazy like saving the file. Okay, so back into File, we're going to click Save As, and you're going to notice that the Save As menu looks a little different than it did on the desktop. Here it says Save As, Save a Copy Online. When I click that, I want you to notice the location where it is saving it. Depending on whether you are working on your Google Chromebook, or if you're working on a desktop computer or a laptop at home, it might be trying to save this file to a different location. For the purposes of these exercises, it's not super important where you save it. It's just important that you know where you saved it so that we can find it later. Up here under the name, I want you to call this file ExcelActivity1. Click Save. Okay, so now that you've saved your file, you've entered in your 3 restaurants and your yes or no answers, you've put in your name. Please make sure that this completed file gets turned into Google Classroom under ExcelActivity1. That concludes our assignment for today. If you have any questions, please make sure, it's really important while you guys are at home working through these activities that you communicate. Email me, use my Gmail, or put in comments in the classroom and let me know how it's going. I can't see what you guys are working with, and so it's going to be important as we move forward that you guys get comfortable sending me screenshots of anything that you have questions about so that I can see what your screen looks like. You can, on most computers, use the print screen button just like we did in class. If you're using a different device, it might be slightly different. You can check online to see how to do a screenshot for the different devices. Maybe somebody who is using a Chromebook can post as a classroom comment how you screenshot on a Chromebook so that everybody can see that as well. Okay, I've talked enough and I've tried making this video umpteen times, so I'm ready to call it a day. I hope you are too. I will see you guys next week. Make sure that you have a good weekend and stay healthy. Okay, goodbye.